Tom Platz is always preaching about the squat.
Nothing compares to squats.
He attributes his legendary legs only to squatting. It's the king of all leg exercises after all. Many people listen to his advice and tried to replicate his "you only need to squat to get big legs bro" philosophy. And for most people, that approach failed miserably. But I believe that there's more to his mutant fucking size quad development. In this video, I'll uncover the secret sauce that Tom Platz used to get his legendary legs. There are 3 exercises that we'll be discussing today, which are, in my opinion, far superior to the standard barbell back squat, with in-depth form cues, with instructions on how to set them up, and what you should consider when programming these exercises to get mutant-sized legs. And for the first 2, we'll have to walk over to the hack squat machine. There are 2 distinct ways that Tom Platz himself perform these. The Platz hack squat. This is not the typical squat pattern, but something in between squat and a sissy squat. But it can still be treated as a main heavy quad builder. No! Just like a normal hack squat, which is already very quad biased. The benefit of this variation is that it is even more quad biased, as you're getting even more knee flexion in tension and stretch position than in a regular hack squat, due to the setup and way it is performed. This heel lift variation of the standard hack squat won't limit your force production, as you being locked in a stable machine overrides the lack of foot contact and instability you would get in a normal squat. Now let's go to the setup, technique and mental cues you can use to perform this exercise. Place your feet down on a platform as low as possible. Use a narrow stance, closer than shoulder width apart. Point your feet straight forward, or use a duck stance, like Tom Platz advises. Try both and use what feels most comfortable and natural to you. When going down into the eccentric, think about driving your knees as far forward as possible, while keeping your back pressed against the pad. Don't initially force the heel lift, it will happen naturally due to your low foot placement, but once it lifts, you can go on your toes to get even more knee bend. When completing the rep, think about pushing your heels back into the platform again.
As I push up with my toes, my heels drive into the platform,
as you don't want to stay on your toes for the whole duration of the movement. Most hack squat machines don't allow you to get as deep as possible,
especially if you're in that shorter category, vertically challenged, whatever is appropriate,
and are limiting your range of motion in the stretch position.
So when I go down to the bottom, for me, this is an okay spot, but I can really smash in even deeper. So I really would ideally like some more depth.
To solve this problem, use 2 yoga blocks and put them between your shoulders and the pad. This will increase your range of motion by the thickness of the yoga block, which will therefore allow you to get a full range of motion. This is the hack squat. As Tom Platz explained, it is more of an isolation exercise. As the name suggests, it is the same type of movement pattern like a normal bodyweight sissy squat, but it is much more overloadable, and it is much more stable as you're locked in a machine. But it has much more tension in the stretch position than a standard leg extension, which is more short and biased. Don't think for a second that you can't overload this exercise. If this chick can do 2 fucking plates on a sissy squat, you will too someday. Just look at those goddamn quads. I think this exercise is working. The unique benefit of a sissy squat pattern due to the extended hip position is that it biases the rectus femoris, which just cannot be hit with a normal squat pattern. And even if you modify the leg extension to be more rectus femoris optimal, it is just not as effective as a sissy squat. And due to this exercise being much more stable and overloadable than a normal bodyweight sissy squat, it is the hands down best exercise for the rectus femoris. Now let's get into the setup, technique and form cues. Use the same feet position and stance as in the Platz hack squat, as mentioned before. On this variation, you want to intentionally force the heel lift when going down into the eccentric. Think about driving your knees as far forward as possible, literally staying on your tippy toes, while keeping your back off the pad, squeezing your butt to keep the hips extended. This will, as I mentioned, further lengthen and bias the rectus femoris. I would advise you to cut your nails before doing this exercise so you don't snap your shit up. When extending your leg and pushing the weight up, cue and think to yourself that this exercise is not the usual hack squat. Treat the movement as if you would do a leg extension or a bodyweight sissy squat, and really focus on not just pressing but actually extending your leg like you would in a leg extension. What I find best is not completely locking out and putting your heels back on the platform, but staying on your toes for the entire duration of the set, and backing out reps in the bottom part of the movement. as locking out your knees could cause you to rest at the top and unnecessarily prolong the set. On top of that, constant tension style execution just makes this exercise feel so much smoother. That is most likely why Tom Platz himself performed the exercise the same way. Again, if you find yourself unable to get as deep of a stretch due to the machine limiting your range of motion, just use the yoga block trick that I mentioned before. The Platz style sissy squat variations is not just reserved to the hack squat machine, but you can also perform it on the leg press. The leg press itself is more of a total lower body builder compared to the hack squat, as you're also using lots of adductors, lots of glutes due to the hip position. But by using the sissy leg press variation, you can use the leg press, which is more of a total lower body builder, as a more quad biased variation, which is good for those who don't have a hack squat machine available at their gym, or if you just want to quad max your physique. The setup, form cues, etc. is as following. Use the lowest seat height setting possible, so you have more of a flexed hip, which means that you will get more range of motion and quad bias. Problem with most leg press machines is that they don't allow you to get as deep of a range of motion as possible. To solve this problem, you can just take a weight plate and a yoga mat and place them on the seat where your back would lay. This will give you more range of motion in the bottom stretch, just like the yoga block trick. Again, put your feet down as low as possible on the platform. Your heels can even go over the platform, as you won't be using them. Use a narrow stance, closer than shoulder width apart. Point your feet straight forward or use a duck stance. Again, try both and see what feels most comfortable and natural to you. When going down into the eccentric, don't force the heel lift, as it will happen naturally due to your low foot placement. But once you feel your heels coming off the platform, you can exaggerate how much pressure you're putting on your toes, so you can maximize the knee bend. Cue and think to yourself that this is not a usual leg press. Treat the movement as if you would do a leg extension and really focus on extending your knee instead of just pushing the weight up. Now that you know what the actual secret sauce of Tom Platz's crazy quad growth is, how the fuck do you implement these exercises into your program? So the Platz hack squat and the sissy leg press can be used as your main compound variation of the day, as you can still load these exercises up heavy as fuck. The minimal heel lift won't drastically reduce your weights and limit your force production, as the stability of the machine itself will override the lack of contact of your foot. But keep in mind that you are more so isolating the quads and taking the adductors, glutes, etc. out of the equation, which means that you will still be using less weights than on your usual hack squat or leg press. But at the same time, don't be afraid of going heavy. The rep range I would recommend for this exercise is somewhere between 5 to 12 reps. I would suggest to stick to the lower end of the rep range, somewhere between 5 to 8 if your knees can tolerate it. But if not, stick to the higher end of the rep range and do 8 to 12 reps. The sissy hack squat. This is again more of an isolation type of movement, so it will be best that you perform it at the end of the workout, where your quads will already be fatigued, so you don't have to use lots of weight for this movement. This shit is crazy difficult with just your body weight, so don't add any weight at first. So you can expose your tendons and ligaments to this movement with the lighter weights and therefore strengthen it over time. The rep range that I would recommend for this exercise is again 5 to 12 reps. It is a myth that you can't do low reps on an isolation type of movement. It is still doable to do 5 to 8 reps on this exercise, as you performing it at the end of the workout after already doing 1 or 2 quad exercises means that you'll not be using any significant weight, which could injure you. But if your knees still can tolerate lower rep ranges at the end of the workout, go to the higher rep range and do 8 to 12 reps. The tempo you use on most of your exercises is not as important, as long as you're controlling the eccentric and exploding on the concentric. But for the sissy hack squat, I would suggest you to use more of a slower tempo so you don't fuck up your knees. I would recommend a 2 to 4 second eccentric. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. The concentric for most exercises is best done with an explosive manner, but on a sissy hack squat, you want to gradually apply force in the stretch position and explode after you've gotten out of that deep knee bend. By doing this, you will let your joints and ligaments get used to the crazy knee bend that you get on this exercise and strengthen them over time. Remember when I said that these exercises are the secret sauce of Tom Platz's crazy quads? In actuality, it isn't. The secret sauce is this right here.
You fucking promise yourself you'll be the best fucking person you can be. That is what makes you train. That is what makes muscles grow. Nobody fucking knows the secret. That is it. That feeling like you have